What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool, cool. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes to pop in. How you guys doing? Cool, cool. Diallo, what's up? Do you have a mic? I know you have a mic. You were here yesterday, right? Diallo, do you have a mic? I don't know if you have on the bottom left of Discord down. You could go ahead and share my screen. Down here on the bottom left, there's a mic. So we'll go ahead and we'll get right into it, man. Last night we left off. We have a basic form. Let me pull up the actual lucid chart. Cool. So I was looking at the map API a little bit today, and man, there's so many things you can do with it, but that's probably going to be the most challenging part of this feature right here. The form part is actually the easy part. So what we're doing is we're just entering a zip code, and we're going to execute a function on the server. We're going to check to see if the zip code is a serviceable zip code or if it's unserviceable. If it's serviceable, we're going to return an object same as serviceable. If it's not, it's unserviceable. That's going to determine which page we're actually navigating to. And so there's a couple, this is like very, very straight to the point as far as pseudocode does. I want to show you guys some code that I was writing with a different form validation tool that I was using. And it's pretty cool. It's really clean too. But let's see. Were you working on the form validation with them yesterday? Or were you doing something else? I can't see your name. I just see an X. What was it again?
Oh no, I this is the first time I've ever joined one of these.
This is your first night here too.
Yeah. Although
Cool.
I have worked with something called React Hook Form in the past, which has done pretty good validation.
React hook form. Okay, I think that's one
Yeah.
of the ones we were talking about. The other one they were talking about was Formic. The one I'm going to show you tonight is Zod. Pretty straightforward. They all basically do the same thing though at the end of the day. What's your name though?
Oh, my name is Xander. My college username was XXK3990, so I just kept it at that.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. How long you been coding for?
Um 2 years out of college now. I studied coding at college, but now I'm been doing freelance ever since.
Nice, nice. What kind of freelance stuff you do?
I'm web development, like HTML, React, CSS, JavaScript, Node, and I recently started working with AWS, which was very, very confusing, but kind of fun once I got it working.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, AWS is there's so much involved. I guess it really
Exactly.
depends
It's
on what
great.
you're doing, but it's like, man, there's so much that goes into it. And then Diallo, do you have a mic? Normally we're just chatting, so feel free to keep the mics unmuted. It's usually very interactive. Yesterday we had more people, but I expect it to keep growing because yesterday was our first night back after a long time. We haven't done the pair programming sessions in a really long time, and I'm spending most of my time working on a project. And I'm like, man, there's times where I just want to work with other people because I'm just working by myself for the most part. So I have a ton of open source projects that I want to launch in the next year or so, and people want to take ownership of them or run them. That's cool. We started the repair one yesterday, so I'll go ahead and just break it down a little bit for you too, and then we will jump right into the code. So basically, we have a zip code entry form. The application is like a decentralized appliance repair. So customer comes to the UI, they come to the home landing page, they enter a zip code. If their zip code is in a serviceable location, navigate here. If not, navigate here. Regardless, they're going to fill out forms, but that's kind of later on. We're not even really trying to think about this right now. So they enter their zip code. We have a server action on the server. We verify the zip code with the database. Um, if the zip code is already stored in the database, then we go ahead and we increment it. If it's not yet stored in the database, then we save it in the database and then we increment it. Eventually, there's just going to be, we were asking yesterday what's the best way to do it because the scale that we want to do it on is like, are we going to start just local in a big city, which probably has like 10 or 50 zip codes alone? Are we going to start statewide, nationwide? Because nationwide, they were saying there's like just a massive number of zip codes. So I said, let's just get this thing up and running with dummy data, dummy zip codes that we could test up against. Once the functionality is running, then we could plug in a real data set. Let's just get it running first. And then, so this is all user side. Let me go ahead and just create something here. Should be able to, that's the text, right? No worries. So there's going to be an admin dashboard, and this is a map. So this is my pretty crappy drawing of a map here, just to keep things as simple as possible for now. The zip codes that have the highest number are going to be dark green, a little lower, light green, yellow, red, if there's none that have been entered. So basically at the end, you'll have a map and colors will be plotted on the map based on how many times a zip code has been entered. And it's really a visualization map for business decisions. So you're going to be able to look at the map and you'll be like, okay, 1,000 people are entering zip codes from this location, 50 from this location, 150 from this location. So more of like an expansion tool. So you can see exactly where you want to expand. Looks like we have someone new. What's going on? Was that was okay. You just hopped off and hopped back on. Cool, cool. So yeah, that's basically it. We have our UI. I'm guessing he has connectivity issues. We have our UI, our user side. We have our admin, which is just going to be a map. So for now, when we create this, we can literally just create an admin dashboard that pulls the number of zip codes entered and just shows them as strings. And then eventually we'll want to plug those strings or that data into an actual map. That's probably going to be the most difficult part of this feature right here. Have you done stuff like this?
Sorry, you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, not I've not really worked with zip codes before, unfortunately, but this is kind of exciting.
Okay. No worries. No worries at all. So there is, I'm going to show you a little bit of code from this other project. So this is a very simple form to create a topic for like a Reddit type application. So you can see we have our form here. We have just the H3, create a topic. We have an input. This one's called name. We have a text area. This one's called description. And then we just have the submit button down here. When you click this submit button, you're executing the server action, which is really this actions.create topic. And then if you go over to the create topic, so this is actually a client component, and this is going to be rendered on the server here. So you can see with this Zod form validation tool that I'm using here, you can see you do Z object. Ours is going to be zip code. It's not going to be name. It's going to be zip code. And then we're going to do string. We're probably going to do length of 5. So the length has to be 5. And then we could do a regular expression that just says, like it has to be only numbers. The other option is we could enter it as numbers, but I've always found it easier just to work with strings. So it doesn't really matter. And then you pass in an object with a message in case the form fails. And then you could see in the server action, the first thing we're doing is we are just pulling the name and the description off of the form data, which comes from our form. Ours is just going to be zip code. We'll store our result here. If the result is not successful, then we just return the errors. The errors is going to be in this form here. So it's going to be an object with, for us, it's just going to be a zip code for the form fields. And we're going to have form for like database errors or like if they're not signed in, that sort of thing. But with our site, they don't even need to be signed in. So we're not really thinking about authentication right now. So let's just assume that it is successful. Here they're checking to make sure that, or here I'm checking to make sure that they're logged in. If they're not logged in, it returns the error object with a form error saying you must be signed in to do this. And then this is from the database. So you can see the type we're getting from our Prisma client. That's actually created from the schema. So the schema is telling us what a topic needs to look like. Every topic is going to have an ID, a slug, a description, hosts, created it, and updated that. The only thing we're going to be working with though is, at least in this site, is ID, slug, and description. And the name is the slug, and the description is the description. So if we come back over here, you can see we have name and description. This is basically what we're using for slug, and this is what we're using for description. So we go ahead and we create topic. We create it with the database. And if the database query fails, then we go ahead and we just return the error message. We return the error object as a form message, and then we get that. And if it's not an instance of error, so if the object that we get back is not an instance of error, then we just have a check or something went wrong. We don't know what it is. But regardless, if you look here, you'll see similarities is um, the shape of the object we're returning. So this is an object with a property called errors, which returns um, an object. It might have these properties on it, it might not. In this case, it's definitely going to have some field errors on it. In this case, you can see again, we're returning an errors object. In this case, it's just a form property with an array of strings. Regardless, they're all going to be arrays of strings. And then same here. We're returning an error object. We're returning an error object. The only thing that changes is whether that error object is returning form for database or authentication errors, or name a description coming from our form validation tool. So I haven't even installed the form validation tool, but we can go ahead and install that. But yesterday we had a couple people in here and we were actually discussing which form validation tool we were going to use, and we were going to discuss which one we were going to choose. So I was going to come prepared to show the Zod tool, and they were going to share Formic and React form, the one you mentioned, but they're not here. So we'll go ahead. We'll just use Zod. That's the one I'm the most familiar with. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. Is there anything you want to chip in? I know you have your experience. I'm not like an expert by any means. A lot of the stuff that I'm actually doing here, I'm exploring earlier in the day. So if it seems like, oh wow, he knows his stuff, like I just spent a little time digging into this stuff earlier in the day. A lot of this stuff is new to me too. This isn't meant to be like me leading the charge for every event. This is meant to be for us to work together, type some code together. There's a couple main tasks that we need to do here. One of them is, let's just say, add form validation. We're going to wire up the form state hook. So if you look at this other project here, we're importing use form state. And you can see that we're creating form state here. So this is a form state object. And this is the initial state of that object. So you can see it's an object with a property called errors, and the errors property is an object. So you can see if we go back to our function here, when you return an object with an errors property, that returns an object. An object with an errors property, that returns an object. An object with an errors property, that returns an object. So it's starting as an object with an errors property that contains an empty object. And it's basically attaching itself to our server action. So when we go ahead and we click this button here, it'll run this server action. It'll pass this form state to our server action. You can see we're passing our form state into the server action here. We need to pass the form state and we need to pass the form data. We're never actually using the form state in here, but this server action has access to the form state. So when this server action returns, we're returning a form state. So like that right there, it just needs to be in the same structure. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm just taking it all in. It's kind of
Cool.
interesting.
Cool. All right. So I'll keep this project there. We're going to wire up the form state hook. We're going to.
So sorry. So that was a previous project, and this is a new one.
Yeah, this is a new one right here.
Okay.
This is the zip code project. So hopefully we can get the whole zip code thing wired up today. We actually have to set up the database too. That shouldn't take too long.
What is the database done with?
We're going to be using Prisma client, and it's a SQLite ORM. So
Okay.
basically like SQL, but it's really easy to work with, really easy to set up. And then when and if the time comes to scale up the application, then we could go ahead and build something a lot more robust and scalable
Okay.
on a server of its own. So while you're up the form state, we'll go ahead and write different cases in case validation fails. We don't have to worry about them being signed in, but we do have to write a check for failed DB query. DB query. And then yeah, so all this will happen inside the try catch. And then we will we'll just send back a message for now. And that should be good. That should be good right there. So let's go ahead and install this here. Let me see. Installation. npm install. Right. I think we're going to be using for strings. So you can see we'll use z.string.length 5, and then we'll also, we could pass in a regular expression. Actually, I think there's numbers to it. Let me see. Positive, negative, must be an integer. Greater than or equal to 5. So this is basically minimum 5, maximum 5. I don't see a length here. So we'll go ahead and we'll stick with string because string actually has a length. And then we could just write a regular expression. Yeah. Because we could write the validation for the zip code that we put in. We'll make sure that it's dot length 5, and we'll make sure that it is regular expression that only includes numbers. And then it should return with here we go. And then we'll pass in a message. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Okay, so we could pass in a message for every single check. All right. That makes sense. Let's see how we did it in the other one. So in this one, we went ahead and this was also a string, minimum 3, regular expression. This was lowercase, only lowercase. And then, all right, so we could pass a message in for length and we could pass a message in for regular expression saying it must only contain numbers. Easy enough. The object. Let me see what object. The object. Oh, okay, so this is if you're all right. So it's just got to match our form basically. And then there was one other thing that I was trying to get set up yesterday. Let me go ahead and run npm run dev. I think we got like a basic page started up. Hey, hey, what's going on? We're just going over some of the requirements for the project that we're working on right now. Garge at 11, what's up? I don't know if your audio's, it looks like you're talking, you just highlighted. Do you have a mic? I'm gonna go ahead and actually create a live share link. That way you guys can hop into the code editor with me and type some code. Feel free to hop in. We usually, this, this right here, this live share link, it's a tool, it's a Visual Studio Code tool created by Microsoft. You know how like Google Docs, I could share the link and then you hop in my Google Doc, and if I type something, you see me typing in real time. If you type something, I see you typing in real time. Same exact thing, but with code. So really cool, really useful. And then, all right, cool. So we have this, and yes. So the server action, everything's already wired up. We just have to build the actual logic. So that's what we're going to be doing now. There was one thing I was trying to set up yesterday. It's called Next UI, which I really like, but it wasn't working for some reason. And I'd like to just get that set up really quickly first. Manual installation. Let me just make sure we have all the tools that we need here. So, all right. So npm install nextui-org react framer motion. Let me make sure that's in there. Nextreact.org. Hey, I heard you. You just muted up again though. Unless I'm hearing things. But feel free to
No,
unmute.
I don't know if that
What's
was
up?
me. Sorry, my dog is acting up. My dog's being weird.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. All right. Well, GuardJ11, feel free to unmute and say hey. Normally there's a lot more people in here. I guess it's just a Tuesday night, but we usually go from top to bottom, introduce everybody, see where you're checking in from, what city, how long you've been coding, that sort of thing, and then we get to it. But all right, so we have next UI org, framer motion. That's what we need. Tailwind config. We need to import this. So it looks like we have that. Next UI, cool. Inside the content, we need to node modules, next UI, perfect. Theme, extend, dark mode class, plugins, next UI, perfect. So that's set up the way that it's supposed to be set up. And then I created a provider here. I just created one providers component because if we have to add more components, more providers, then it'd be nice to just put them all in one file. That way we could just wrap the entire project with providers, which is what I did here. So any providers we'll put right here. Oh, I think that's it. I think that was the problem. That should actually be it. And then we start it and we should be good. Yeah, so we have button. Cool. Hmm. Nope. Provider props. Yes, perfect. Cauldron. Next UI provider. React. Application wrapped up. This is optional. Don't have to worry about that. And then, yeah, I mean, that should be it, and that should work. It's not working right now. That's okay. We won't sweat the styling and the button, but it definitely should be working. Hmm. All right, I'm not gonna sweat it. I will I'll dig deeper into those documents after. Let's get the form validation all set up and the real logic. I'm not a big styles guy. All right. So we are going to turn this into a client component since we're going to be using form state. Next.js to create a client component, you're going to have to put use client up here. We'll go ahead and we'll import use form state. And we will go ahead and in the top of the component, we will do form state and action. So this is going to be the actual object that we're passing to our action. This is going to be the actual action. Use form state. The first one needs to be the action that we're going to be executing, so verify. The second one is our error object here. And then we'll go ahead and take this action and wrap that up. This, I believe, is a TypeScript error. Argument of type is not assignable to parameter. So we need to make sure that we're returning an object, like I said, an object that looks like this from this function. So I believe if we just go ahead and do that now, that should go away. So we also need to pass in our form state and our form data. And we'll go ahead and we'll just create an interface for this form state similar to the other one. Form state. It's going to be an error property with an object. It's going to contain zip code, which is going to be potentially an array of strings, and forms, which is potentially an array of strings as well. But they're both actually optional. And since they might not be on, like it might just come back with a zip code property and not a forms property. It might just come back with a forms property and not a zip code property. So we'll put the question marks right there. We'll go ahead and say form state. All right. So now we're passing in our form state. We're passing in our form data. We're returning an object that matches the structure of our form state. And verify zip code. And
So is there like an external list of zip codes that you're going to be testing it against, or do you have like a?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we're going to be I think just to get it up off the ground, like we could literally do something like, like just to test it out and have a basic list of like a static list of serviceable zip codes just to make sure
Mhm.
our functionality is working on a very small level before scaling up to an actual list of real world zip codes
Yeah, yeah.
that are serviceable. And then the unserviceable list will basically be all the zip codes that exist minus the service, uh, which we don't even need an unserviceable list, honestly, because if it's not in the serviceable, it's unserviceable.
True.
So if it just doesn't exist in the serviceable list, it's unserviceable. Um, let's see. Okay. Yeah, so when it comes to, I was actually thinking about whether the zip code thing was even worth it in the beginning, but because it seems like an extra step, like you could just have people fill out a form and collect their information or whatever, and then do repairs for them. The whole point of this application right here is an education platform. Like it seems like a business, like where people are going and fixing appliances or fixing washers, dryers, computers eventually. But the main thing is like the way I came up with this idea is I was like, I read this book called A Plus Certification, and I was like, how can someone who's never repaired anything in their life, no knowledge of any mechanical or electrical or anything, develop these skills? How can you go from zero to fixing computers? And so I just I did a bunch of research on like what are like the easiest appliances to begin repairing.
Mhm.
Vacuums is one of them, and a lot of people have them, a lot of old people have them, and a lot of people want them fixed. They don't want to get new ones, especially because they buy like 300, 400, $500 ones, and they're very simple. They have a switch, a cord, a little motor, some tubing, so they're very simple, very easy to fix, very easy to open up, and so it's just a good place to start. And then eventually the people who come on, and obviously, performance is tracked. The ones who are fixing the most, doing the best job, have good performance reviews, are able to move up to more complex appliances or electronics or whatever they're fixing. And then eventually all the way up to computers. So it's basically a trajectory for someone who has no mechanical or electrical experience to begin developing it, and the ones who work the hardest work their way all the way to like fixing computers, electronics, like the higher end type stuff. My idea is like it's not even, I don't even want it to be something profitable or any of that stuff. I want anything that comes in from this to go directly invested back into the people who are actually doing the repairs. Education for the people who are doing the repairs, help them grow, help them become better, help them make money, provide
Mhm.
benefits, all that stuff. And then um, anything extra, just reinvested back into education in one way or another. I'm like, it's all education for me. So that's my main focus. And then, so there's a couple problems. I was talking to a couple customers. My buddy owns a vacuum shop, and a lot of the customers were like older people who were hauling their vacuum cleaner across town, waiting 2 weeks for a repair, and they
Mm.
just hated it. They were so upset, and so I basically just asked them like, "What would you do to improve?" And a lot of this stuff that I'm building right here is just like stuff they told me. They don't want to have to haul it across town. They want someone to come to them. They don't want to wait 2 weeks for a repair. They want it done automatically. And if you look at our diagram, we do have the zip code entry to see if they're even serviceable. and to make better business decisions on where to expand. But eventually, they're going to have to answer some questions like, hey, is it turning on? Basically, the questions they asked in the shop, like, is it turning on? Is there suction? And that data, that self diagnosis data that customers are filling out, eventually you could use that for to train an AI model. So you could use all the self diagnoses from the past, all that data, and then use a label of what the actual repair was based on the answers to the questionnaire. And then you could begin predicting with high accuracy what the repair is going to be based on the self-diagnosis. So if someone fills out a self-diagnosis, it's this brand. Um, they answer the questions this way. 87% chance it's going to be this type of repair. And then that way the repair people can begin showing up with the correct part most of the time and just fixing it right there on the spot and eliminating tons of wasted time, tons of wasted driving, tons of wasted time, and just get things done a lot quicker. So this definitely goes deeper than just a simple zip code form. This is literally just one tiny piece of it, but each piece of this is as as cool, as deep, as complex as this simple zip code entry, or more so. Like with the AI built into the self diagnosis, this zip code entry has the visualization map to help make this better business decisions of like, hey, where should someone be hired next, kind of thing. So just to share a little bit. Um, so we have our form state, we have our action, use form state, passing in our action. The initial form state is the object within error. And then it returns an error. Cool. All right. So now no more errors. The form state is being passed to the server action properly. And then the server action will go ahead and we'll build the validation into this. The only thing is, as we're building out the validation, we're going to come to a point where we actually need the database to build the try catch block. So at one point we'll have to wire up that database. Have you wired up databases before?
I've worked with Postgres and SQLize. But that was with Node.js. That wasn't with Next.
Okay, cool. Like
I've actually never
Express.
worked with Next.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Cool. So
but I assume
yeah,
it's very
post.
similar. I could be wrong.
Well, it's basically just a wrapper around an Express server.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a wrapper around an Express server, and it's serving server side rendered React to the browser. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
what I yeah, that's what I like most about it, because if you're building a customer facing application, you want server side rendered web pages. That way, when the web crawlers crawl your page, it's not just div root. Like when it gets to the browser, the content is already there. Whereas with client side rendered, the the Google web crawlers are so powerful and so fast that they might already visit your website before it has a chance to render. You know what I'm saying? So when they pull up your website, it loads up. They're like, they see a div with a root instead of actually seeing the actual content. So it's not going to show up in search engines the way that a server side rendered application would show up. So it's really great for SEO. If you're building some type of internal tool like this dashboard, the map for internal users,
Mhm.
this could be client side. This you could just build if you have to wait a little bit longer for the load time, like an extra second or two, that doesn't matter because these are internal users looking at maps, and they're not going to go to a different page or not buy because it's taking a second to load. Users will, you know,
Mhm.
they need things loading instantly. And so with something like this, people aren't searching this on search engines, you know. All right, so let's build this form validation. We have Zod. We're going to, let's check this out. So we have the Z object, but we are actually import Z from Zod object, and we just have a zip code. String dot Z string. So it has to be a string, length 5. If it's not, message. Okay, and then a regular expression, right? Three jacks. All right, what does a regular expression for only numbers look like?
Hmm.
That's a good
I've only
question
ever
for
done it for
ChatGPT.
strings.
Huh?
I've only ever done it for strings without numbers.
Is a regular expression that only matches numbers. ChatGPT is the perfect tool for this. All right. Match only decimal numbers, whole numbers, integers. All right. Yeah, we want just whole numbers. All right. And if we get an error, must be only numbers. All right. Not a dog, though. We'll just call it response. All right. Cool. So that's basically our schema right there, right? And then we'll go ahead and, how do we call this thing? Parse schema methods. Okay, parse. Yeah, because we're going to parse the form data. So parse. So we'll say, we'll call this zip code schema. And then we will parse this. Let's go ahead and add this here. And zip code schema dot parse zip code form data dot zip code. Doesn't exist. So that means that name zip code. Yeah, so that should be good. See what our form data looks like. Alright. So we have name, symbol, state. um, hmm, How do we do this in that one? Okay. So form data, safe parse. Oh, form data get. We'll go ahead and we'll use safe parse too. I wonder what the difference between safe parse and parse is, though. Check that out. Parse. Given a Zod schema, you could call its parse method to check data is valid. If it is, a value is returned with full type information. Otherwise, an error is thrown. Perfect. Safe parse. If you don't want Zod to throw errors when validation fails, use safe parse. This method returns an object containing either the successfully parsed data or a Zod error instance containing. Yeah, so we want to handle all of the errors on our own. In that case, we don't want Zod throwing the errors when form validation fails. We just want to get that response. We want to get either successful or unsuccessful response. And if it's successful, then we continue with the try catch. If it's unsuccessful, then we throw some errors. All right. Oops. Cool. So we have our response here. And then let's test this to make sure the success and unsuccessful both work. So if we come over here and we type letters, all right, success, false. And then we actually have error messages here. And then if I go ahead and type 5 numbers, success true. Perfect. What if I type 8 numbers? Success false. All right, cool. Cool. So that's working. We can get rid of that. We have our response if response dot success. So you could see in the command line, we're getting this object back, and success is either going to be true or false. So if success is not true, then we want to return an error. And we're going to say response dot error dot Latin dot Latin dot field errors. And you could do let's just do error response dot error, see what that returns. Hey, what's going on?
No, it's not over, man. Come on.
What's up? What's up?
Attention and swim water off today, bro. How am I forgetting this?
Hey, Telly. Alrighty then. um, all right. So we will return error response. And then let's go ahead and let's just put form state dot error down here. Try that out. Um, inside a div. Is not assignable to type React node. Is not assignable to type React. Is the expected type comes from property children, which is declared here. Form state error dot error or error. Okay. Let's go ahead and all right. I just want to see the difference between these objects, honestly. So let's just do console.log error. That way we could see what it looks like without the flatten. If we have 6. Zod error. So you get all this. You get this whole thing. And then if we go ahead and we use this here, dot flatten, dot field errors, it should be a lot more succinct. Okay. Error. Only plain objects and a few built-ins can be passed. Okay. All right, so here we go. In this case, we just get issues with a message. Okay. So we will say flatten field errors. All right, so that's if it's unsuccessful. And then we should have access to that form state right there. We should be able to print out this form state in the component though. That's the thing. So like this component should have access to the form state, but when I try to, let's see how the other one was done.
So somewhere in the
Weird.
HTML, you want to print out the error.
Yeah.
Okay.
Errors.
Maybe
Zip
it'll only
code.
show up if there is an error, so you gotta like make sure an error occurred for it to show up. I could be wrong though.
Form state dot errors dot zip code. Then we will paste that in. Otherwise, no. All right, so if the zip code error exists, then we'll return it in a div. Otherwise, we'll just return null. All right, so let's make this there.
That's just a theory. I don't know if that's correct. Oh, it worked. Cool.
Length must be 5. All right, cool. And then if we do letters, must be only numbers. All right, perfect. So we're getting the correct. What if we do? All right, so we get both. All right, cool. And then we could do join. That should. There we go. All right, that looks way better. Doesn't look good, but we know what we're getting back. This is working. If it's not valid, then we just send back that response. All right, so we have our add form validation, form state hook. Try catch. We do have a right to, we do have to write a check for failed DB query that comes with the database. Send back a message. We already did that. We passed in the form data. All right. So now we actually have to set up the database. So we could go ahead and we'll write a try catch. We'll just say unknown for now. And all right. Cool. All right. Cool, cool. So if this code works, all right. Set up the database. All right, so let's check out the Prisma documentation. Build with Prisma ORM, open source Node.js and TypeScript, object relational mapping with an intuitive data model, getting started. Let's just go to, I think we'll do SQLite. So let's do get started, start with Prisma ORM from scratch. All right, so this is actually creating a project. npm install Prisma, so dev, npx Prisma init, data source provider, SQLite. All right, so we don't need the command line interface. Everything's going to be code related. And then we should get our model. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Prisma init, SQLite. Cool. All right. Set the database URL in the env file to point to your existing database. If your database has no tables yet, read this. DB poll to turn your database schema into a Prisma schema. Okay, so you could take a previous schema from a different database and turn it into a Prisma schema. So that's pretty cool. That makes it easy. Run npx Prisma generate to generate the Prisma client. You can then start querying your database. All right, so we have our schema. Let's check this out. All right, so we have a schema. Database URL. All right. At this point, you have a Prisma schema, but no database yet. Run the following command in your terminal to create the SQLite database and the user and post tables representing your model. So we're not actually using user and post. We're using yeah, so I guess how do we want to model this data? That's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we do want to have zip codes.
You can also set up
And
a UUID for each one, or just an ID. ID or UUID, depending on your personal preference.
a custom ID for each zip code.
Yeah, like just something so that you could get each zip code by its ID, or you could just do it so you get each zip code by the zip code itself. That works too.
Yeah, so it's not stored to the database until it's actually entered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when it comes down to storing the serviceable zip codes, that's actually a totally different function in itself. But are we going to store it the same way? That's the question. That's the question. So
I wonder if there's some sort of external API that has a list of all zip codes.
yeah, there's got to be. Oops. Probably costs money.
Probably.
Zip code API. Free access to worldwide postal code. Country code. Okay. State, New York. Latitude, longitude, but it doesn't tell you, it doesn't give you like a latitude, longitude mapping. That's actually what I was looking into earlier. I'll go ahead and just take a little detour. So I was asking some questions to ChatGPT earlier, and I was like, how do you actually map out? Like, how do you draw? Like, how do you shade in a zip code area in dark green if there's a lot of people coming from that area, and red if nobody's coming from that area, and yellow if a decent amount of people are coming from that area? And basically, for each zip code, you need zip code boundaries. So you could basically you're you're using these coordinates to draw a polygon on the map, and then you fill that polygon.
Oh, okay.
It's actually kind of cool. That's just one of the steps, especially if you're building it custom. Like this is a feature that um, I think this is just a really cool business tool that any business can use, right? Like, where do we expand next? You know, obviously we're entering zip codes right now, but eventually, as you build out the features, there's going to be reasons to ask the users for geolocation data. Like, hey, almost every single app I use knows my location. So based on that alone, they won't even have to enter their zip codes anymore, you know?
Hmm.
But anyways. Um yeah, so I'd say when they enter their zip code, it creates a new zip code record, and each zip code record should have a now this is administrative. When it comes to providing the serviceable zip codes, um that's going to be different. That's going to be a totally different thing. So we'll focus on this feature for now. As far as like navigating to the correct page, because this really is two separate features. One of them is collecting the zip codes, storing them in the database, using those stored zip codes in the database to create the visualization for the map. Another feature is navigation and user experience.
Hmm.
Um, and that's user flow. So that's going to be taking that zip code, comparing it against a list of serviceable zip codes, and navigating based on whether that condition returns true or false. So, all right. So we'll go ahead and we'll just say, what do you do? Model zip code. I think. All right. So we'll have an ID. All right. So we'll have the zip code. We'll have the zip. It'll have an actual zip code, right? Which is going to be, save it as a string. Has to be unique. So if it already exists, then we just tally it and then count. Yeah, I mean, I think eventually that's all we need to get started. eventually you can go ahead and add other location data, but for this feature, yeah, I think eventually, like I showed you over here,
Hmm.
it would make sense to have boundaries. Um, but that's you wouldn't have to do it here. We could just keep it simple for right now. Because you could always just create the boundaries when you create the map for each zip code that's stored. Take the zip code, have another function that's like get boundaries, get zip code boundaries, for example, pass that zip code in, return the boundaries, use those boundaries to populate the map, something like that. But yeah,
And then
this is
depending on the count, you would say green, yellow, or red.
yeah. So there was actually some other stuff I was
Hold on, I'll be right back. I gotta use the
right.
bathroom.
Yeah,
And my dog's being weird. Come on.
yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and create this schema. Looks like if we run npx Prisma migrate name, we'll say init. This command did three things. It created a new SQL migration for this migration. It executed a SQL migration file against the database. It ran Prisma generate under the hood. Okay, so that'll actually generate the client. All right. You now have your database and tables ready. Let's go and learn how you can send some queries and write some data. Read and write data. All right, cool. So all we need is zip code for right now. All right, running generate for the first time. It's actually creating our database. Cool, and then, all right, so our database is in there. They're just binary files. And okay, so I wonder where I should, in this other project, we had DB, and then we actually just created the Prisma client inside the source directory. So we'll do the same thing here.
I'm back.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and so this should be everything we need right here. All right, so now we have access to the database. Basically what I did while you were gone was I ran npx Prisma migrate dev init. So that basically took the models that we created, the updated models.
Yeah.
It ran a function with all this stuff here, and it created our database. So our database is just binaries in our file system for right now. It allows you to create the database, run it on the same server as your Next.js server, and get your app up and running. I think that if you're starting to see numbers come into your application, and even before you start seeing numbers come into your application, you should really start thinking about um, how you're going to build it in a scalable way, separate from the server, depending on how many users you have coming in. But now this should work. So I created inside our source directory, I created a DB directory, and inside I created db.ts, where we're just importing the Prisma client that gives us access to the database, and then a DB with a new. So we should be able to access this DB anywhere in our project now. So if I go ahead, the database should be set up and ready to go. So if I go ahead and I say, we're not going to do this right now. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna say zip codes equals await db dot zip code. Cannot find db. Let's go ahead and import our db. db. That's fine for now. All right. So db zip code. Make sure. Yes. So it's showing up. Perfect. Zip code dot find many. And then we'll console.log our zip codes. So we actually don't have any zip codes stored inside of our database right now. So let's go ahead and just store some before I run this. Zip code dot create. Data. Zip code. And that's going to be
Form data, right?
Yep. Parse. Form data. That does match our schema, right? Zip code. String. Unique. Let's just make sure. It's string form, it should be good. npm run then. Five, 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 five. All right. That's good. But it might be saying, I think I know what it's saying. Zip code. So this is saying form data entry value null is not assignable to type string. Type null is not assignable to type string. So it doesn't know if it's a string or if it's gonna have a null value. It could be a null value, right?
Mhm.
The expected type comes from property zip code, which is declared here. Zip code form data entry. I wonder if I could just type cast it into a string. But yeah, it might not even exist. Zero. Man, Stack Overflow is falling off. I like. Let's see who's better. Type line, non-essential. Do, do, do. Invoice email data for first name, last name, and remarks. Okay, so they're doing the same thing here. They're pulling off from the form data. Line.
So maybe Eugene, you need to do the value or empty, or the value or null, or something like that. I don't know. Oh no, maybe not. Ignore me. I could be wrong.
No, you're good. I'm just let me see if this works.
Maybe it requires being explicitly typecasted.
Property count is missing. All right.
And the ID.
The database will set ID automatically.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we added a default, so that should be good. So we actually only want to create this if we don't already have it stored, right? So we're gonna have to pull the zip codes, see if the zip code that was entered is already there. If it's already there, then we just increase the count of the one that's already there. If it's not already there, then we go ahead and we create it and we start the count as one. Otherwise, we do count as count plus one. All right, so let's see. So let's do this with a couple zip codes, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do find many, make sure they're stored in there. Technically, we could write a function that's just like generate zip codes and do like and then basically this whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't you do that? And then you literally just go ahead and create like 10,000 zip codes in the database and set all of their counts to one, right? But you wouldn't be able to, you'd have to set it. I would be, I wonder how you do this.
You do it in backticks.
Backticks?
Interpolation, sorry.
No, you're good.
I think there's two things on either side are called backticks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, something like this. And then let's see if that works. All right. So we'll still have to enter one because we want this to execute. And then, oh, it might actually take a while. I should have done 10,000. I should have done 100. Let me fix it. I don't know how long we're gonna wait. All right, until we get to. Yeah, because 10,000 database queries. All right, so 10,000 to 10,001. That's funny. Let's try this again. We should do to make sure it's running. What is this one? Oh. Huh. So it printed out the first one. Yeah, so. For some reason that's not working, that's okay. We can go ahead and just do them. I wonder why that wasn't working. It's okay. So let's go ahead and
Why were you starting at 10,000? Just out of curiosity.
just so I know that it would be 5 digits.
Oh, fair enough. That makes sense.
What is that, like 5? They have to be unique. All right, so we have 5 in there. We're gonna use this code after, but let's go ahead and just see if our zip codes are stored. All right. So now when I click this function, then we should see all of our zip codes pop up over here, right? Oh, wow. Okay, so it was saving. Wow, all right.
Nice.
Okay, and the reason why it froze on the second one was because it already existed. All right, so we have an array all set to 1. All right. So the database works. We almost got through all of it. I should have just waited. It was actually working quicker than I thought. All right. So now we need to go ahead and find many, get our list. Let me go ahead and just write some fresh pseudocode here. We're gonna find many. Iterate over our zip codes to see if actually we don't even have to find many. We could do find unique where zip code equals zip. All right, so if it exists in there, if exists, then increment the zip code by 1. Else, if it doesn't exist, create the zip code and set it to 1. We already have that code here. So there we go. And then. So if it already exists, then we'll go ahead and we'll do an update. Where zip code equals zip. Let's set it to 1. All right. Let's see. So if it exists, let's go ahead and just see what we're getting back for exists. I'm going to enter 10,000 because I know 10,000 is already saved in there. And 10,000.
That should make count 2, right? Or no, still count 1.
It should make count 2. So I just printed out, this is the exists. So that's the zip code. So I'm going to go ahead and actually call it zip code. We got to find like a better naming for all this stuff though, because. And then if it doesn't exist. Let's just try 9999. All right, so it doesn't null. All right, so we're getting back null if it doesn't exist. So zip code is going to be null if it doesn't exist, and if it does exist, then it's going to be a zip code object. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So update. We're going to say zip code dot count +1. Can we do that?
No, that's in create.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Count. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and just test this out really quickly. All right, so this one should have a count of 2 if I enter 10,000. Yes, perfect. All right, cool. So the functionality works. Cool. Okay. Zip. Bring this up a little bit. Then we'll return error at the end. We actually want to. Yeah, so then our next step would be compare zip code against serviceable zip codes. If it is serviceable, redirect to I guess, yeah, we'll redirect All right. And then also, we will want to revalidate admin map. That's way later though, but since we're changing, if zip code count is perfectly divisible by like 100, we don't want to revalidate it if for every zip code that's entered, every zip code change, but every single time a zip code tally is perfectly divisible by like 100. So like every time 100 new counts, or it's brand new app, so we could do like 10 just to start off. It's probably not too much for a new application, but that's later on. All right, cool. Yeah, that works pretty well. And then we could start building some. We can start building a user flow. I mean, there's people who probably want to style this. I don't care about any of the styling stuff at the end of the day. I really don't. Like, I'm styling. I'm on this application that I'm spending most of my time on. I'm definitely doing the minimal number of styling. Um, but there's people who are newer who just want to style a button, you know? So we have stuff for everybody, whether they're new or experienced. And yeah, man. We'll stop right here because it's 10:43 and planning to do a couple hours a night, you know, 9 to 11 every night, that sort of thing. This is perfect for tomorrow. I think tomorrow we can get that set up.
I unfortunately will not be here tomorrow or Thursday, but I'll join on Friday. I'll be back Friday.
Okay. No Fridays, just Monday through Thursday, but next
Oh,
Monday, man. Yeah, no
okay.
sweat. I'm planning to be here every Monday through Thursday. I have a
I
bunch
may
of
be able to
open
catch the
source stuff.
tail end of Thursday. I may be able to catch the tail end of Thursday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Sounds good then. What are you up to for the rest of the night? You doing any of your own coding or what?
The rest of the night, no, I'm done for the night. But I've been applying I've been applying nonstop. So that's the rest of my week, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What did you say you're freelancing right now?
Yeah, I just finished up freelancing, and I'm trying to get into full time.
Gotcha. Yeah, man, I'm realizing more. I had imposter syndrome for a really long time, and I'm realizing more and more that we can do anything. You know, we really could. Like when it comes down to building something, even if it requires a technology that you don't understand, like if you have time to actually do the research and do the investigation and read the documentation and all that stuff, man, like we could figure it out. You know, that was like the hardest part for me was just realizing like, oh, I could build anything if I'm focused and I read documentation. Documentation is everything. But
Hmm.
yeah. What's one of the projects you worked on?
My longtime personal trainer wanted a website, so I made that with React, Node, Postgres, AWS, and Stripe.
Nice. I'm
Mhm.
using Stripe right now. Um, where are you checking in from?
Oh, I'm from New York City. I'm in New York City.
Okay. We're in New
Yeah.
York.
Um, Downtown Manhattan.
Okay. Right in the
Yeah.
center of everything.
Yeah.
I was in Manhattan during the Christmas. I was like, get me out of
I feel that,
here.
especially during that time of
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, man. My girl lives in Queens, so I'm out there every once in a while. And anyways, it's pretty frequently.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will let you take off. Thanks for popping in today.
Cool.
And
Cool.
yeah, we'll keep grinding, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
See ya.
See ya.